So beginning with this Sunday, we shall try to look into the essence of the great epic, the Ramayana. Maybe 7 or 9 or maximum 12 Sundays, I'll be taking topics from this great epic and we'll be discussing on the important events in this great epic and what we can learn from the great epic. Otherwise, Ramayana is 24,000 slokas. You have to go by chapter. It will take a few years to complete the great epic. So I'll not be going into such detail, but mainly on the great character of the Rama, the Lord Rama. There is a difference between the epic Ramayana and Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the story of God. Ramayana is the story of a human being. Rama is a human incarnation. In the sense, though he was the incarnation of Sriman Narayana, he was not conscious of his divinity as much as Krishna was conscious. Rama behaved and acted like a human being. He just demonstrated the human possibility. The problem with us is, if some great divinity comes in our midst in a human form, setting as an example, so you can achieve character excellence like me, you can follow dharma like me, and you can attain spiritual illumination like me. We don't try to take the example as example, and we don't want to put the character traits into practice. We don't want to absorb that. We will nail the great personality onto the wall. We will put a garland across the portrait, sometimes burn incense, give arati, from a distance say that, yes, you are a divinity, you are a great individual. I have nothing to do with your greatness. But we need to understand, Lord comes in human form just to set an example before us. These are the characters, these are the virtues, these are the qualities that you need to cultivate. This is how you need to practice dharma to become enlightened. Dharma actually is a vague word, it's a principle. How to put that dharma into practice to show us Lord actually took human form, that was Rama. Ramo vigrahavan dharmaha sadhu satya parakramaha. We all know this. It is an embodiment of dharma. How dharma has to be practiced, how it can be put into practice. Why should we practice dharma? Because dharma is the means by which we can liberate the spirit from the clutches of matter and thought. What is enlightenment? There is spirit here, there is consciousness here, there is God here, but it is bound. The Lord is covered, as it were. We don't experience a full being. We don't experience a true being. We experience only the physical and the psychological aspects, but not the spiritual. Because the spiritual is covered by the physical and the psychological. The physical and the psychological, it has covered the spiritual. So to experience the spirit as spirit, we have to transcend the limitation imposed on us by the physical and the psychological. And what is the way? Practicing dharma is the way. Why should we practice dharma? To liberate the spirit from the clutches of matter and thought. That is the goal. We have to set the goal first now, and then how to practice dharma. So we are in confusion. So here actually is a beautiful example in the form of Rama. The Lord actually took a human incarnation and he had all the human, what you say, not weaknesses, but just as we has the capacity, the same capacity the Lord also had. That's all. He did not show his divinity at every moment, every event in that great epic. He just wept like a ordinary human being. All his emotions were just human. He just conducted like a human being only, an extraordinary human being, a perfect human being we call. Swamiji said beautifully, we don't even worship Greek gods. We are not fascinated by them. Why? Greek gods are not like human god. They are extra superhuman. Anything superhuman that disconnects us, right? It creates a distance. So he is a god, he is a divinity. That means what? It's not possible for me to become that divinity. So the distance. The Greek gods are not just like, but in our culture, who is a god? He must be in human form, and in character, he must be extraordinary. Then only I can connect with that particular individual. Then only I can derive inspiration. If he is not in a human form, if he is not a human individual, he is extraordinary. In the sense that he has all the supernatural powers. So I am an ordinary human being and he or she is a divinity. So there is a huge difference. We won't get connected with that kind of embodiment, that kind of incarnation. So Swamiji says we don't even worship gods like Greek gods. They are supernatural. So God has to come in a human form and we worship that individual who actually manifests an extraordinary degree of character. Virtues like truthfulness, kindness, compassion, charity, integrity, honesty, many other virtues. And in fact, sage Valmiki asked Devarshi Narada, I wondered whether is there any human being who is endowed with all the virtues by the Father in heaven. We all know the virtues, what those virtues are. Narada asks actually, what do you mean by virtues? So, Valmiki narrates kindness, valor, charity, character, the 16 qualities. Is there a human being who is endowed with all these qualities? Valmiki was thinking, the sage was thinking, it's only a figment of imagination. How is it possible to have a perfect human being? It's not possible. Swamiji said in many talks, perfection does not belong to this realm. You can't have a perfect human being. Human being means life. Wherever there is life, there is death. How can there be perfect life, he says. The contradiction in terms. There is nothing like perfect life. Life implies death. Life implies old age. Life implies death, disease. So perfect life is a contradiction in terms. But Valmiki, the sage, was thinking, perfect I meant not that he would not die, not that he would not become old, not that he would not fall sick. I mean an individual who is embodied, who has all the virtues that you can name, who has qualities in him to the highest degree. Each of the virtue he manifests to the highest degree. Has created Brahma, has ever created a human being like that? Is it ever possible to have such a perfect human being? Or is it just a figment of my imagination? The sage Valmiki had a doubt. Would it ever be possible to have such a human being? We also now and then get the thoughts. We see everybody is imperfect. They see us as imperfect and we see others as imperfect. Others see us imperfect. Is there a perfect man, a perfect woman, a perfect human being whom everybody declares as perfect? Even if a perfect individual comes also, we have to see that individual only through the lens of our mind. He doesn't, or she doesn't appear as perfect to us. Definitely we will find some faults. We will pick some holes in the character of the individual. We won't see the individual. We won't be able to see the individual as perfect. That we don't understand. In this relative world, even if today a person like Rama comes in our midst, will we find some faults in him or not? We will find. So this is a relative thing. It's a relative thing. Perfection is a relative thing totally. when you see an individual through the lens of your own mind, okay, the fault is not the individual as such. The lens, the fault is here in the lens. And so there is not possible to have a perfect life here. Perfect life is a contradiction in terms. But sage Valmiki wanted to know a human being who is endowed with all the great qualities, all the great virtues. And then Narada said, in these times only the person exists. His name is Rama. He is the son of Dasaratha. What perfect human being you want to see? He is there now itself, not in some distant past, here itself. He is there in Ayodhya, the son of Dasaratha. His name is Rama. Sage Narada said this to Valmiki Maharshi. And then after a few days, many days passed, Narada Maharshi narrates the story of Rama to Valmiki and his disciples. Ever since he heard the story of Rama, the thought of Rama, the legend, again and again actually started coming up before the mind of the sage. One day he went to the bank of the river Tamasa. He just entered into the river to take bath. A disciple was around him. A disciple actually gave his clothes to him, the Valkala, the tree bark. The sage was in knee-deep water, he was just meditating. Suddenly he heard some sound from the Kadamba tree on the bank of the river. Some murmuring. There were two birds, crownchair birds. They were in romance. The sage was looking at the birds in great compassion. He's just seeing the ritual of love. So suddenly he heard another sound. An arrow came from somewhere and pierced into the heart of the male bird. The male bird fell down in a pool of blood. The female bird started screaming. That disturbed the sage's meditation, as it were. And then he came out from the river and just saw the bird in the pool of blood. Suddenly, a hunter came out of a thicket. We saw he who shot the arrow. Sage Valmiki pronounced a curse on him. Not that he wanted to pronounce curse, it just happened. Ma nishada pratishtham tvam agamaha shashvatah samaha yat krauncha mitinad ekam avadihi kamamohitam. Ma nishada pratishtham tvam agamaha shashvatah samaha. Ma, O Nishada, you have done a wrong act. You will not have a long life. You will not live full life. Yat krauncha mitunad ekam avadihi kamamohitam. You just kill the bird that is in love with other bird. So Valmiki Maharshi pronounced a curse. Not that actually he used his volition, he had an intention to pronounce the curse. It just happened. The sloka came out of him effortlessly. And then he went back to his hermitage. He was thinking on the sloka. I did not want to pronounce a curse on him, but suddenly it came out. The cadence of it, he was just meditating on it. The sloka. The poetic beauty of it. It was not me, somebody else spoke through me. He was wondering who could have actually spoken through him and pronounced that curse. Sage was looking into this. That sloka, all the four padas. And when he was meditating like that, thinking on that and reflecting on that, suddenly he saw a great light in front of him, as if a piece of the sun came down to the earth. Then he opened his eyes. It was created Brahma. Chaturmukha Brahma, creator, Pitamaha, was in front of him. Then Brahma said, "It is I who sent Narada to you, O Valmiki." So you heard the legend of Rama. Now you compose the poem in the same meter. in which the unstuck meter, in which you pronounce this curse on the hunter. In the same meter, whatever that you have heard from Narada, you compose the poem. That will be the Adi Kavya, the first poem. And as long as the story of Rama lasts, your glory will last, your name will last. You will become immortal. So compose the story of Rama. That was the instruction Pitamaha, Brahma, had given to sage Valmiki. And he says, Yavas tasyanti girayah saritascha mahitale tavat Ramayana katha lokeshu pracharishyati. Yavas tasyanti girayah, as long as the mountains remain, Saritascha mahitale, rivers stay, tavat Ramayana katha lokeshu pracharishyati. Till that period of time, the story of Rama, this Ramayana will last. That means this is an eternal epic, eternal poem. As long as there is creation, the story will remain. It's there, right? How many millenniums back the poem was composed, we don't really know. And many of us have this question and doubt. Is it actually really happened? Is it a historical thing? We need to understand that these epics transcend history. What is history? Do we have history some 300 years back? Any historian was there 300 years back? 400 years back? No. History is a very, very recent phenomenon. Right? When we started educating ourselves in this modern way, and we thought actually what might have happened in the past, then how did we write history? Through rock edicts, through legends, through folk tales. We just compose, we piece together some information, and then we name it as history. But all our epics actually are not dry facts that happened sometime in the past. They were all composed by sages. Sages means people who did not depend upon these physical things. They were actually Krantadarsis. They would go into time. They had the capacity to go forward or to go backward. At will, actually, they would go into the past. What happened in the past, just like a cinema, how we see cinema picture vividly, in the same way, the things that happened in the past would come in front of their mental eye. That's what a Rishi means. It transcends time. It can go forward and it can go backward in time. Bhuta and also Bhavishyat. Both will be just as we see the physical universe, they will be able to see into the past and also into the future. So these sages actually had composed these epics. They are our stories. They are all human stories in the sense the fight between the Devas and the Danavas. We just look at our own being, what is happening in our mind. Constantly there is a fight going on between the lower forces and the higher forces. There are these divine forces, there are these demonical forces. Both are there. Human being represents a conflict between these two forces. Yes or no? You are just a conflict between these two forces. Ramayana, that's the conflict actually beautifully depicted. Mahabharata, the conflict is so beautifully depicted. The conflict that is happening within us. When you transcend the conflict, you are in nirvana, you are in liberation. You have become free. So the conflict is happening in the mind. So all that actually through characters they represented. So if you just see the conflict that is going, always actually these demonical powers are more powerful. The sattvic powers are comparatively, sattvic I don't say, but the gods are actually, they have faith in God, they are more sattvic, but they are less powerful. They would not rely on their physical and intellectual might as much as they rely on the spiritual might. Whereas the demons or asuras, they are very powerful physically and also sometimes intellectually also. They rely more on their own physical might and intellectual might and not so much on the spiritual might. They will not surrender to God. They just rely on their own ego. Even Ravana, when we see the villain in this story, Ramayana, Ravana, how many years he did penance? 10,000 years. 10,000 years. He wanted to have a boon from Lord Shiva. He sat in meditation on a rock, 4 fires on 4 sides, 1 fire from above, that is the sun. Panchatapa, we say, a kind of penance, a kind of tapas. He did it for 1,000 years. Shiva did not appear because the Lord knew why this asura was doing the tapas. It's not good to empower an asura. So he was delaying and delaying. He didn't come. 1,000 years passed. Ravana cut off one of his head and offered it into the fire. Another 1,000 years passed. Shiva did not appear. The second head he severed and put it into the fire. Another 1,000 years passed. Another head actually he hew off and put into the fire. Like that, 9,000 years passed. 9 heads he cut off and actually put into the fire, an offering to the Lord. Still the Lord Shiva did not appear. Now 10,000 years passed, the last head, the only remaining head, he was about to chop off that head, and then the Lord appeared. I am immensely pleased with your penance and tapas. You just see the determination. But the intention was not good. He wanted to empower himself. He wanted to make yourself powerful. Why you want to make yourself powerful? Let me be the strongest man in the world. Let me be the strongest woman in the world. What you will do with that strength? Again, that matters, right? You have sought a boon. Fine. You want strength. What do you do with that strength? Ravana had no clarity. Why? Because Rakshasa. Because of the preponderance of tamas and rajas. Because of the dominance of these two lower qualities. Though he had the strength to do tapas for 10,000 years, what I should seek from the Lord? No clarity. What did he seek ultimately? One boon I will give, the Lord said. Let me be the strongest man in the world, in the sense that my strength should be the ultimate strength in the world. Lord said, Tatastu. He acquired the strength now, but he was not happy with even that boon. He wanted to make himself immortal. Again he sat for tapas. Again 100 years he did such intense tapas. This time, not meditating on Shiva. This time he meditated on Pitamaha. After all, Ravana actually was great-grandson of Brahma. His grandson was Vishravasu. Vishrava's son, sage Vishrava's son was Ravana. Though he was the son of a sage, this was the contaminant, this was the impurity in the mind. Again he did tapas for 100 years. Brahma had to appear before him. Then he asked, my child, what is your desire? He said, make me immortal. No, that is not possible. He said, whoever actually has come into this world of name and form must die one day. You can seek long life, but you can't ask for immortality. Eternal life is not possible. Life cannot be eternal. There must be some terminate. There must be some end. If we know that we won't die, we know how we will behave, right? How we will behave. Okay. Irresponsibly we will behave. It is a death actually that is putting a check on us. Okay? Societies, human societies cannot be societies anymore. The societal life will not become possible if you make man immortal. So Ravana wanted immortality. Then Brahma said, I cannot give immortality. That's an impossible boon you are seeking. Then he said, I should not die in the hands of Deva, Danava, Daitya, Asura, Siddha, Yaksha, Gandharva, Kinnara, Kimpurusha, or any other god. He did not seek exemption from man. He thought human beings are two weaklings, trifles. Okay, I am already endowed with strength. Shiva had given me the boon. I would be the strongest being in the world. So what a puny human being will do? So he did not seek protection from humans. That's why Lord had to incarnate in human form to kill Ravana. Now he is empowered with the boons. Now he is uncontrollable. This is what? Ahankara is there, ego is there. Now he has power. He is almost immortal. Not immortal, but almost immortal. In the sense that nobody can kill him. Uncontrollable. Started troubling everybody. Whoever he wants, he will bring. Everybody has to be his slave. So that's the problem. He had the strength, he had the determination, but how to use the strength and where to use the determination, there was no clarity. Empowered with boons now, he has become a nuisance for all beings. Then gods went to Brahma, saying, there you have empowered him, you have given him the boons, this is how he conducts himself. He doesn't let any sage do yajna. The people who don't harm any creature on the planet Earth, these Rakshasas, they go and they desecrate their yagashalas They desecrate their hermitages. They kill these rishis and munis. So these Rakshasas have become a great nuisance on the earth, particularly in this Dandakaranya. So then go to Lord, and Lord says, yes, I will be born as the son of Dasratha in Ikshvaku lineage. All the kings in this Ikshvaku lineage, they were the worshippers of Sriman Narayana. Beginning with Ikshvaku, who is the son of Manu, all the kings actually were amshas, part manifestations of Sri Mahavishnu only. They were real embodiments of Dharma. The real embodiments of Dharma. Of course, the greatest is Rama. All who preceded Rama also had that divinity of Sriman Narayana. They were also part manifestations. But the greatest manifestation of Sriman Narayana, Lord Vishnu, was through Sri Rama's incarnation. Even the kings who preceded him also had, they also were part manifestations of Lord Vishnu only. A galaxy of actually kings. Ikshvaku, Mandhata, Sagara, Harishchandra, Dilipa, Raghu, great kings. That throne actually, such a prestige was attached to that throne. That Ikshvaku throne. No ordinary mortal occupied it. Only Daivamshas, people who were born, who are endowed with divine qualities, sat on that throne. We will discuss the next week that even this Kaikeyi episode, when you look it into. And also before that, when Vishwamitra goes to Dasratha, these Rakshasas are actually spoiling my yajna. They are not allowing me to meditate peacefully. I am disturbed by them. Because now I am under oath, I cannot kill them. So send your children with me. Dasratha was reluctant, They are just 16 years old, barely 16 years old. How can they face these asuras? I will come with my army, O sage, but I can't send Rama and Lakshmana. You know that they are like my own life, prana. Then Vishwamitra says, Ikshvaku vamsajatopi Dasratopi san napalayasi chetu vakyam ko anyaha palayashyati. Ikshvaku vamsajatopi, having been born in Ikshvaku lineage, if you don't keep your word, who else will keep you? And Vishwamitra thundered like this, he shuddered in fear, Dasratha. As soon as he mentioned the name of the lineage, that was the prestige it had. He yielded. Dasratha yielded when he mentioned that you would be the first king to go back on your promise, to renege on your promise. That's all. He is okay. Then Vasishta intervenes, we know. Same thing with Rama also. When Kaikeyi sought the boons, one intention of Rama was to make his father a Satyavadi. Because nobody who had occupied the throne, that Ikshvaku throne before, Dasratha, had ever told a lie, had ever gone back on their promise. And my father, Dasratha, should not be the first person. So that is the thing, to make him Satyavadi. How much of argument actually he had done with Kausalya, Mother Kausalya. Mother Kausalya argues, next week we will discuss all these points. I have as much right on you, Rama, as Dasratha has. Your father has that much of right, I am mother, I also have the right on you. So you should not go to the forest, I am commanding you, obey me. And Rama put forth his own arguments. So there's such a beautiful things are there in Ramayana, and how to follow Dharma, how to practice Dharma. Actually, it's a human incarnation. Last week also, before last week I told that the beauty of this incarnation is we can imitate this life of this incarnation. We can't imitate Krishna's life. Krishna's teachings we have to take, and Rama's life we have to take. Rama's life is a source of great inspiration. You really read Ramayana. Some of that power, some of that which Rama actually had embodied would manifest, would find expression through us also. These epics are not geofiction imaginations of a poet. There is such potency in them. They are actually the stories of God. They are actually the story of the Lord. When you read these stories, some power will come into our being. They are not just mere books. The word of God is equal to God only. And here in this story, particularly the Ramayana, some passion for Dharma will come into our being when you read this. You can't read the book without actually developing passion for Dharma. Nobody will be able to do that. And also you will fall in love with that character, Rama. And also it is very difficult. Nobody can read this book without shedding a tear. Okay? Nobody can read this book without shedding a tear. We can actually even put somebody to test. No, I am ready. Okay, I will read it without shedding a tear. Then at the end of the book, after reading the book, you can declare that this is the man who is stone-hearted, whose heart is actually as hard as a stone. Unless your heart is as hard as stone, it is impossible to read the scripture without shedding a tear. This is a relative world. Why? An epic like Ramayana gives us so much of consolation. Whatever may be the difficulties that we have, whatever may be the tragedies that we may pass through, our tragedies will never transcend the tragedy that Rama had to pass through. Lord will never make us pass through such tragedies because we would commit suicide. He knows that. Right? Compare yourself with the Lord. How much He suffered. How many trials and tribulations He had to pass through. One after another, series of tragedies. We become lighter. Our burden of life will become lighter. It's no burden at all. Because it's a relative world when you compare ourselves with Rama. Because you will fall in love with Rama, and now you have fallen with Rama, and all the tragedies that you had passed through, you will see. What is my life? What is my burden? What are my tragedies? My hardship? Nothing. They are trivia. They are like small pieces of cotton compared to the tragedies that my hero had to suffer. I said you will fall in love with Rama and Rama will become your hero. And now because Rama is your hero, how much of suffering my hero could endure? And what is my life? What suffering I have? If you compare, your suffering and your burden is nothing. It is that which makes us lives lighter. That's why reading of Ramayana is important. Otherwise, it is a small hardship, a small setback in life. People are contemplating suicide today. Just a little scolding is sufficient. They look at the fan. A little scolding. They have become so sensitive, so precise. Why? You just read this story. How much of consolation comes to us? There is no human being today who is experiencing. Recently, one person came. Swamiji, my tragedies are bigger than the tragedies of Rama. First time I heard. So I had no time to listen to his tragedies. Actually, I really wanted to hear actually how his tragedies are bigger than the tragedies of Rama. Unbelievable. I didn't believe it. But he is feeling it like that, just like that. Nobody had suffered, as much as I suffered. That's what he wanted to say. But difficult to believe. You just put yourself in Rama's place and experience the suffering that he had to undergo. How you would react if you were in place of Rama? Would it be possible for us to react the way Rama had reacted? And if you react the same way Rama had reacted in situations like that, you have become perfect. How that became possible for him? For that you need to read Yoga Vasishta. The first prakarana, the Vairagya prakarana. Before actually coronation, before he was banished to the forest, Rama actually had undertaken a long pilgrimage. He went across the length and breadth of the nation and visited all the important pilgrimage places. He saw the people and their sufferings first hand. And he developed deep dispassion. Not out of any pessimism, okay? But he just saw there is suffering intrinsic to life. So this life doesn't fascinate me anymore. I am not interested in ruling a kingdom. I am not interested in anything. When he came back to his kingdom, and he was so indifferent to everything. They're not interested in taking food, not interested in taking bath, not interested in the affairs of the kingdom, not interested in dance, nothing, no entertainment also. And Dasratha was so worried. What happened? Has my son gone into depression or what? What might have happened? So you would be discussing with other Purohits, Rajagurus. Ultimately Vishwamitra and Vasishta come there. And then Vishwamitra says that let Vasishta instruct him. Okay. Then they bless Rama after listening to this Vairagya Prakarana. The first actual Vairagya Prakarana is Rama who narrates that to Vashishta and Vishwamitra. And they bless the child. Yes, your Vairagya, your dispassion is genuine, he says. They were so happy to listen these words from Rama. Yes, it is right. Anybody who has the right discernment, who has that keen insight, who will look into the affairs of the world, will sooner or later develop deep dispassion, for sure. And that dispassion is the first step for nirvana. For practicing dharma and for attaining mukti, that dispassion actually, it's not a negative word. When you have discrimination, dispassion will come automatically. When you have dispassion, detachment becomes easy, and you will be able to conduct, through the affairs of life, you will be able to navigate very smoothly. Without that dispassion, without the detachment, if you get attached to everything, life will become very torturous. The brief journey between life and death becomes so torturous as it is for many people today, because no attachment, no dispassion. They bless Rama there. Perfect. This is perfect. Then sage Vashishta says, fine. Rama wants to withdraw from the activities. He says, no, what difference is there between jnana and karma, where Lord is not there, where consciousness is not there? You are born a Kshatriya. So the throne is coming to you as, you are the natural heir. So sit on the throne. It will not make any difference for Rama now for you, whether you sit in a throne or whether you live in the forest. It makes no difference for you, because that inner dispassion is there. And afterward this incident happened, that Mother Kaikeyi is seeking boons and asked him to go to the forest. It did not affect him, because by then it got firmly established in thorough dispassion. The world is only a fiction. There is no real joy in it. So there is something higher than this world, that is consciousness. He has got established in the self. From that actually he just started looking at this drama nonchalantly. You see, in Western philosophy there is realism and idealism. But Vedanta is neither realism and not idealism. Idealism says that the world is only an idea. Realism says that it is real. It is real. This world of the five senses is real. All our experiences are real. Vedanta actually reconciles both philosophy, these two, idealism and realism. Vedanta says, yes, both are true. From which perspective you are looking, which platform you are looking. If mind is real, the world is real. If the mind is not real, the world is not real. The world is only an idea of the mind, in fact. That is the truth. But when you give cognizance to the mind, then you understand that the world is also real. So it's Vedanta which strikes a balance between these two philosophies, realism and idealism. And it is neither realism nor idealism, but it combines both in it. That's the beauty of it. So we may say theoretically that world is an idea, it is fiction, it is only creation of the mind. But is it our practical experience? Do we consider it as a fiction? If it is fiction actually, why people take so much of interest in the world and things of the world? It is real for us, right? As far as our worldly life is concerned, all experiences, all happenings are real for us. But for a mystic, but for a true philosopher, but a sage, all our experiences are unreal. Even if it's a painful experience or pleasurable experience, both are unreal. Because all those experiences come to us only through the mind. For a sage, for a human being, mind itself is unreal. And any experience born of mind must be unreal only. But they can speak idealism, but not we. Not we, because we are so sense-bound, so deeply attached to our body. For us, the world is real. But theoretically, and from the point of view of the truth, the world is not real. The mind one day we have to conquer. It is only fiction. It is only a fiction. All the experiences born of the five senses and the mind is only fiction. When you transcend the mind, that you understand that. So from realism to idealism, and then ultimately beyond all the philosophies. That's neither idealism nor realism. It is the truth, absolute consciousness we have to get. And Vedanta actually directs us. So there is no conflict here between realism and idealism. It reconciles beautifully both the philosophies. Now we are only realistic because the world of five senses is real. For 99.99% of the population in the world, the experiences of the five senses are real, 100% real. If it is not real, then you would be striving for perfection. We may say theoretically that world is mithya, world is illusion. But when we conduct our affairs in the world, do we have that sense of mithya? Do we have that sense that actually world is an illusion? No. We think all these things are real, and that's how we conduct ourselves, the way we conduct. But from the absolute point of view, the world is only a fiction. That's the truth. So from realism, we have to graduate to idealism, which says that world is only an idea in the mind. So when the mind is trapped, world also disappears. There is only homogeneous consciousness, only one God. That is the ultimate state towards which we are all traveling. A vast mass of people unconsciously, a minuscule minority of people are consciously struggling towards that truth. So our emphasis and our endeavor, our goal should be to make more number of people travel consciously towards that truth. So we shall stop here for today. The next week, the second lesson, the drama part of it. Okay. Mother Kaikeyi is seeking her boons, and how Rama handled the situation, and what lesson we can learn from the way Rama had reacted in that situation. It would actually help us a lot, definitely. How we would react placed in the same circumstances, how our hero actually reacted. That will give us a lot of inspiration. We shall take that up next week. We shall meditate for 2 minutes before we disperse.